Hey everyone, it's Jessica. Welcome back or welcome to my rooftop chats. Today, I wanted to talk about the Substack post that I wrote and released recently on unblocking creativity. And in case you're wondering why I'm holding the mic, it's because it doesn't work with my shirt today. So it's just going to be one of those holding the mini mic type of chats. And I wrote down what I had written in the Substack post, and I wanted to just expand a bit on the ideas that I had in that post. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this topic in multiple places is because it's just been such a central part of my life in the last 6 months, I would say, that I felt like it merited more than one mention. And yeah, so I hope you all will find some use out of these 7 ways that I've found that have been very important for being able to unblock your creativity. Like I said, I think that all of these things combined together will hopefully make an impact if you are also on the journey of rediscovering your creativity and figuring out how to integrate it into your daily life. So, just to set the stage a bit for the rest of the discussion, a lot of what I'll be talking about is the Artist Way, which, if you aren't familiar, it's a 12-week program written by Julia Cameron. And it essentially has a lot of different prompts in it, but it boils down to kind of two main recurring tasks, one of which is morning pages, which is like a 3-page stream of consciousness writing that you do in the morning every day for the 12-week program. And then there's also weekly artist date. So that's where you just go out to like a museum or like even a thrift store, anywhere that's sort of outside of your normal day-to-day places by yourself, and you're meant to kind of observe the things around you and just be like a child, because a lot of what the Artist Way is trying to do is to cultivate that inner child in you and the innate curiosity that you had when you were a kid. And so through that, it's meant to help with unlocking your inner artist. So that is a large part of what I was exploring in the last few months. And one of the first things that I'll mention, though, is like the Artist Way was a big part of everything, but I think that there were other sort of things that I learned along the way as well that I'll also like sprinkle in here. So let's get started with the first thing, which is noticing your thoughts. So this in the world of psychology is also known as metacognition, but it's basically the idea of what it sounds like, which is just noticing the thoughts that you're having as opposed to constantly being on autopilot. And most of our lives is really driven by autopilot. And so when we take time to notice our thoughts, we can realize how negative they can be sometimes and how we might be having the same negative thoughts over and over again, which then leads us to have these other overarching negative thoughts about our life in general. So for me, there was a lot of like negative thoughts about work that I was having because it was like a really busy time. It was like really stressful and everything. And so I think that those constant thoughts that I was having every day would then spill over into other areas of my life, like working out, which was something that I really like to do. And I felt like I started to not enjoy it as much and just feel like there was not as much energy that I got out of it. And so it's interesting just how thoughts from one area of your life can spill over into other areas of your life and can make it very difficult to find joy in life in general because your thoughts are negative. So, by taking the time to notice your thoughts, and the way that I did this was I would just catch myself when I was having thoughts of the same nature and just write down the thoughts that I was having without feeling the need to necessarily do anything about them. But I think that just by noticing it, it made me realize, okay, like I'm having the same types of thoughts every day for like weeks. And it's no wonder that I find myself in a funk or like not able to access my creativity. It's because I'm so blocked by all of these thoughts that I'm having. So, my experience was that once I was able to notice the thoughts, then I was like, okay, like I could just take a breath or something, and then I can readjust my attitude towards this, right? And through that, even though I wasn't necessarily forcing myself to do something, I think like very naturally, I just had that inclination to be like, oh, like I'm noticing that I'm having all these negative thoughts. It's not really the place I want to be in. And then gradually, I was able to shift it into a like, how can I think about this differently? Or maybe like think about this more as a growth opportunity as opposed to like, oh my God, I hate this and everything. So that was my experience with noticing thoughts, and I felt like it had a really powerful impact on my general state of being. And the next thing is the idea that we are all creative. I think this is a very succinct sort of idea, but it's very important to point out nevertheless. Julia Cameron talks about how in each one of us is an artist, and we are just socially conditioned to move further and further away from it because of different rules and responsibilities that we have on ourselves as we get older. And I think that she makes a really great point that in that each one of us is an artist because each one of us was a child at some point, and children are naturally very curious. They're very observant of the world, and that's why you'll see like in magic shows and stuff, it's like the kids that can notice when something weird is going on and they can sense it, versus like the adults are like so oblivious to whatever tricks that the magician is pulling off. So I think that she thinks, I think maybe this is why she thinks like each one of us is an artist, because we were all children at some point. So we all at some point had that ability to be artistic and creative. It's just that like we end up like losing touch with it as we get older. So I thought that was a good point because I think that because I had not done like artistic things in my mind for some time, like going to ballet again or writing as much, I felt like, oh my God, I don't know if, I can really get back to that creative place that I once had when I was a kid. But I'm starting to believe more and more that she's onto something when she says like each one of us can be creative, because I think like each one of us can be creative in like our own different way. So I think that it is an important point to mention, because if you are going on this journey or like thinking about ways in which you can utilize your creativity, it's important to note that like it's innate and each one of us is able to do it. It's not just something that's like only for like a certain group of people, or that like you have to be born with it. I think all of us can find a way to access it. So I think that's a powerful message. So the third thing that I wanted to mention was morning pages. And as I said, it's part of the Artist Way program, but I still do morning pages now, which is again that 3-page stream of consciousness writing each morning. And I still do it now because I find that when you are taking time to just let whatever come out every day, you start to get more and more honest with yourself, and it's almost like you are unveiling that maybe like ego veil that you have when you journal, because you want to even like appear in a certain way to yourself. And I find that by going through the reps of writing each day, every morning, especially in the morning, because like I don't really go on my phone in the morning. And so I feel like my mind is just more of a blank slate, where the things that come out are more like raw and real, as opposed to having gone through the day, having interacted with different people, and then like being affected by that. So I think that there is power to the 3-page. Just write whatever comes to your mind. On days when I feel like, man, I'm really struggling to write, I'll write that down. Like today feels very hard for some reason to write. And I think any observation is noteworthy and useful, because and this is part of the program, is to like look back at your morning pages to see if there are any things that you need to work on, or just like kind of trends in the things that you're writing about. I think it'll start to appear like the more that you do it, which is why like the daily nature of the morning pages is so important, because like through the daily action, you are able to eventually build up to like trends that you're seeing, which I think that for anyone that goes on the 12-week journey will notice, like, oh my God, I keep talking about these things. I keep talking about this and then not doing it. Or like, this is an area of life where I feel like I'm doing really well in because I keep writing about it in this way. And I think it shows you that when you are real with yourself, then that's where the real growth can come from, because you're able to, again, like take off the veil of the ego or whatever else is driving your typical thoughts and just be really honest with yourself. And I think that's where you can be like, okay, like I'm being real about this thing, and like this is something that I really need to change. So I'm still doing morning pages now, and I think I'll continue for the foreseeable future. So the fourth thing is about quantity versus quality. And I think that this was an interesting one for me to write about, and I didn't really I kind of wrote it begrudgingly, because I feel like, oh, as an artist or anyone who's like putting stuff out there, like you should always like make sure that it's your like tip top like thing that you ever do. It's like the most important thing, like you're releasing things and it's in your name, so you want to make sure that it's very profound and like all of those things, and like reaches a very high standard, a very high bar. And actually I think that especially when you're first getting started, similar to the morning pages where you're getting the reps in every day, it's also important when you're, again, getting started to prove to yourself that you're able to consistently release things, even if it's not like your biggest thing ever. But I think that creating the art consistently makes it possible for you to like become a good artist, because what Cameron says is like, give yourself the opportunity to be a bad artist, because at least then you are an artist at all. And then it also gives you the chance to potentially become a good artist or great artist. So I think it's a good point where like, even if you are a bad, quote unquote, bad artist, maybe in your eyes, uh, you are at least are an artist. So that is like a nice way of thinking about the process, especially again as you're getting started, because I think that getting started is super hard, but then continuing on is even harder. Like I think in the past I've had multiple kind of false starts, or just times when I've started something and then I didn't really follow through. Like for example, in college I had this fashion blog that I did where I would just like post some outfits and then write about like, you know, how I styled it and things like that. But I just never continued with it. Like I would do it like maybe a few times and then I'd be like, okay, like this is not really like piquing my interest anymore, and then I'd move on. In that case though, like I realized that writing about fashion is like not exactly my forte or like my interest specifically. Like I don't think that that was like an area in which I was absolutely in love with. But nevertheless, like throughout the years there's been times when I've like started something and then not really continued with it. So I think that doing the reps of like putting stuff out there, even if you don't feel like 100% great about it, but it proves to yourself like, hey, I'm a capable artist and I can do this. So I've been finding that to be the case, that like I've been finding that to be like a more empowering thing about this whole process, is just like not feeling like everything I do needs to be like, oh my God, perfect. Like, because it's never going to get there. Like, I think you could keep iterating and iterating and iterating until like forever. So it's just kind of like, at what point is it done? And I think I've just reached that like it's done point faster now than I used to, because I'm just like, I need to like get it out there, you know? So I wrote in the Substack post like quantity over quality when you're first getting started. And the fifth thing is about the elephant versus the rider analogy that Jonathan Haidt writes about in his book, The Happiness Hypothesis, which I also have a post on that if you're interested on my Substack. It's called On Happiness. And this is basically the idea that your elephant, which is kind of like emotions, intuition, that part of us is often kind of cast aside in the face of the writer, which is the more rational, critical thinking side of us. And I've learned throughout the process that there's really like a time and place for both of those characters in our lives, because I used to be, and maybe to an extent am still, someone who really thinks about like the writer as being like, oh my God, every decision that I make needs to be really thought out, very rational, always like thinking through like all of the different steps and everything. And it's kind of like not necessarily a wrong way to look at it, but I think that a different way could be like, how does something make you feel? And that's a very difficult thing to, I guess, explain, because again, it's a feeling that you have, or like a sense or something. But I do think that there is validity in also listening to the gut feeling that you have, or just a sense that you have, because I have noticed that that might yield more like results that align with you, that are more authentic to who you actually are, as opposed to like thinking through everything and then feeling like it still doesn't feel right. Because like some things I think you can like think yourself into, but like intuitively you're like, it still just doesn't feel right. And I, throughout this process of like unblocking creativity, have learned how to tap more into the intuition piece, because I've just seen like sometimes you don't really need to think too much about it. You're just kind of like, it feels right or it doesn't feel right, and then you just like go with it. And in dance, for example, in ballet, there's different ways in which this can manifest. And I just wrote about how like sometimes, especially when it comes to like jumps that we do in the middle, it's a lot of footwork, right? And it can be more challenging, at least for me, to like remember like, okay, like there's like glissade and then jet saute and like all these things where like you don't, it's like, and then your right foot goes in front and then this and that. It's like so many things to memorize, where it's kind of like, okay, like at a certain point, if you think too much about it, you'll probably like you'll probably like trip over your feet, like it's not going to go well. Like at a certain point you kind of just need to be like, okay, like my body sort of gets it, and I'll use that intuition to drive like me dancing. And I don't think that that's necessarily the best explanation of it, but it kind of gets at the idea like there's a time and place for like the rider and also the elephant. And I've just learned to trust my elephant more. And the more wins, or kind of the more times when you feel like you made a choice using your elephant, your intuition, as opposed to your rider, and it goes pretty well, you're kind of like, okay, like maybe there's something going on here. Like maybe there's something where I can continue to trust the elephant more. And I think it just builds the trust that you have in that system. So yes, using your elephant sometimes and not always your rider. And the second and last thing I'll talk about is your new life is going to cost you your old one. So I saw this a lot, especially like on Pinterest and stuff. And I was kind of like, what does that even mean? But when people talk about growth, I feel like it's very glamorized, where it's like, oh my God, like I got this like new apartment and like I got this new job and I moved to this new city. It's all great and everything. And where's the stuff that talks about like, oh, but like I lost friends along the way because like we just have nothing to talk about anymore because I moved to a new city, or like I feel more disconnected with my life that I used to have, where I didn't have to worry about paying so many bills, or I'm being like bullied at my new job or something like that, right? Like people don't talk about I think as much about when you move to a new stage in life, or are just in a new place in general, how much that can sometimes hurt and make you question like, was that the right thing that to do? Because it can feel very foreign. And again, in the post, I mentioned how like a butterfly is different than a caterpillar, right? Like it looks different, it behaves differently, it has different things that it needs to worry about. And so when we are on the path of unblocking our creativity, Cameron mentions that we can self-sabotage sometimes and take these like creative U-turns, because when we have a breakthrough, or let's say like we get this opportunity, we're kind of like, oh, never mind, and then we might like go back to like our old ways. And so it's something to be aware of, because I do think it's true. Like when we get the things that we asked for, like, are we going to know what to do with it? And I think that that can be also a very scary thing, is like, you hear about artists. I'm thinking maybe of like, for example, like Mike Posner, who was like very popular like 10 plus years ago. And he just, he wrote like, I took a pill in Ibiza, and like, it just reflects on how like you don't like he had such a quick rise to fame, and then he just kind of was like, well, it's like very lonely actually. Like no one talks about like, what do you even do like when you do all of that? And I don't know why that example just came to mind, but it's true that when we face success at a certain level, or just even like we're getting these signs of like, keep going, like it's important to be like, okay, like I can do it, and like still ground yourself in that belief of you got this. Because it's gonna feel very foreign. Like it will not feel comfortable, I think, in many ways. Like as much as like success is lauded so much in our society, but like it's gonna feel weird. Like I think that we don't think too much about, we're just thinking about the climb, right? But we don't think about, okay, when you kind of get there, when you get signs that you're headed in the right direction, do you, yeah, like you turn back, or are you like continuing to march forward? So I think that it's an important thing to point out, is like on the way of unlocking your creativity, like you're gonna face positive things even, but it's important to be aware of like, don't just run back to your old habits because it feels more comforting and familiar. Keep an eye out on like any patterns that you have that might be doing that, because I think that it's like I said, is it's going to feel different, and that is maybe a sign that actually you're headed to like a new place. And lastly, I'm just going to close with the big thing, which is that life is an artist date. It is an opportunity for us to like connect with different people, and to be more playful, and to like explore the world, and just like learn about ourselves. And I think that we often are so serious about life, and I say that because I'm like a recovering very serious person, I would say. And I find that the more that I've integrated like creativity and just general curiosity in the world, whether it's just like on the train, like who knows where, it's just brought a lot more connection in my life. And it's been like a really cool feeling to feel like, even in a city like as big as New York, which is kind of in some ways like a small city, but like I think just connecting more with people and the things around you makes you feel like you're part of this ecosystem. And I've just found that the more that I'm able to create and put things out there, the more spark and just purpose I feel in life in general. And that was also like a point that I had made, that I didn't really know where to fit it in exactly, but it's just that when I'm able to express myself, I do feel more of that meaning in life. And when I don't fit it in, I feel this like weight, like something is missing. And I think I've finally realized like, oh, it's that creativity that's missing actually. So I think to close things out, I just want to emphasize the idea that I think, although the Artist's Way is a 12-week program, but I really started this journey at the top of the year, and it made me reflect a lot more on how I could integrate more of that creativity into my own life, because I felt like that was the missing piece, that where when I woke up in the morning, like what was I looking forward to doing? It was often like the days when, after I had just put something out, that I felt like, wow, like that was really cool and fun, and I want to do it again. And I think it's just this cycle of like trying things. Okay, I didn't really like that, but like what can I implement that maybe will work better for me? And I think I just want to continue to put my thoughts and everything and share like the things that I've been reading or things that I've been learning out there, because it's made such a big impact on my life. And hopefully you've learned just ways to unblock your creativity, because like Julie Cameron says, all of us are creative. All of us can be creative in our own unique ways. And I really think that it's about learning how to bring that out of us, because it exists already within each of us, but it's just a matter of like, how can you bring it out? And I think that that's the important thing to learn more about, is like through these daily actions, whether it's like noticing your thoughts or like morning pages, or working every day on one piece of whatever thing you're creating, or just attending like some dance class or something like that. Like, it all adds together. And I think that it shows to yourself and proves to yourself, like, hey, I'm able to be creative and I can do this. And I think that through creativity and just playfulness, we're able to enjoy life so much more. And I've just found that it's been such an amazing feeling. Like, I really do feel like life is more fun when you're just doing creative things. And it's hard to, I guess, point to exactly why that is, but I think maybe it's just like we feel more connected to ourselves and those around us. So I hope that if you take any of these tips, you'll let me know how it goes for you. And if you're also doing artist way or like thinking about starting, I'd highly recommend it. I did it on my own, but there's often like groups that you can find virtually or maybe in person as well that do it. But you can probably find the book anywhere at a bookstore or online, and you can go about it on your own as well. So hope you have enjoyed today's discussion on unblocking your creativity, and I hope to talk to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.